Yeah.
It's a lot.
So how are you managing your time between professor, family, running a business? How's that going? Check in.
So since you mentioned that, I also wanted to throw in there, I do run a business. I am an architect, and now I'm teaching, and I have a family, 2 teenagers, one in college and one a sophomore in high school. So they have their own full schedules. But I've also been a leader in AIA at our state level, and I just finished a 2-year term on the executive committee at AIA California as the vice president of the Academy for Emerging Professionals. And that in itself was like, I had around 12 meetings a month, which were from an hour to, some of them were just whole days. That was almost another job in itself. And I stepped away. I didn't run for another leadership position this year because I definitely need a break from it. I've been serving in AIA leadership since I got my license in 2015 consecutively. I was elected as the president of our chapter for 2016, which was right after I got my license. We didn't have anyone in our chapter that wanted to be president. And so since I was newly licensed, they said, hey, would you do it? And I said, yeah. And then since then, I've served in my own chapter leadership as we have no staff members. So as a volunteer executive director. And I did an advocacy position called a champion for better communities, which was a AIA blueprint for better. I was an advocate, a champion. So I had training and was done to be a local advocate for more community building and kind of urban planning. And then I was elected to serve as our state representative to the Young Architects Forum for 2 years, and then came on as the vice president of the Academy for Emerging Professionals. So I feel like that has been a part-time job in itself. So, yeah.
And even so, I kind of have 2 questions. So, one, the difference between the Academy of Emerging Professionals and the Young Architects Forum for your area. 'Cause for my area, it's mainly just the Young Architects Forum, unless I'm missing something with the state, which I definitely could. The other part is the Academy. When you spoke about how much time the Academy took and having 12 hours a month, like typical committees, you're maybe meeting once a month and do a few little things. So that's a lot more extensive than a lot of the other committees that I've talked to locally. So why was that more, and what was different?
So our Young Architects representative for our state they're a participant in YAF, in the Young Architects Forum, and so the National AIA Committee. Mm-hmm. And they are also a member of the Academy for Emerging Professionals at AIA California. So, and that is an advisory committee of 10 people. In the Academy for Emerging Professionals, we have 2 student directors, 2 associate member directors. We have the YAF, the Young Architects representative. We have the NAC representative. So if I remember the wording, because they just changed their name, States Associate Representative. And we have a member at large who is a person more experienced as an architect to serve as the experience in our committee. And then we have me as the vice president for the Academy of Emerging Professionals. And then we have a staff liaison. So it's a group of 10 plus the staff liaison. Mm-hmm. And so when you're a member of YAF for our state as the state rep, then you're also a member of the Academy for Emerging Professionals. Okay. So you also have a position as a board member at our state. So your voice is both important at the national level and important at the state level. So our state board has about 60 members. We are the biggest board out of all of the states. And we have, I think, half of our Academy for Emerging Professionals Advisory Committee are voting members on our state board. So we think that it's important for emerging professionals to have their voice represented at our state level. So, I mean, just like every other state, the other members on our board are chapter representatives. We have 21 chapters in California. So, and then they have at least one member. Some of the bigger chapters like LA and San Francisco have more than one member. So,
yeah.
So it's a big board, but as is with every other state, chapters may not necessarily elect their own representative as an emerging professional. So we wanted to make sure that emerging professionals' voices were also on the board. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be. So yeah. And then, so that's the difference between the Academy for Emerging Professionals and YAF as the position.
Yeah.
What we do in the Academy in AIA California is we represent the voice of, and we're advocates for the students, the associate members, and the newly licensed members up to 10 years. And we are the connection to we want all of the local chapters in California to have emerging professional representative. So we are their contact to the state. So we have a summit every year, the Academy for Emerging Professional Summit, every year, where we gather the local chapter emerging professional leaders together with us, and we share with them what our resources are, who they can reach out to. We have a learning program for them to this next year, or this year, now that it's 2024, we're focusing on EDI. So we want them to be EDI champions in their chapter and in their area. We are also connected to the AIAS chapter leaders in our state, and we are working with them on providing a stronger connection and more listening to them, because we want our students to have an easier process, to have a better curriculum. We advocate for more appropriate curriculums at our schools. We're also working with some community colleges in California, and one of them is the college that I'm working at, to develop 4-year bachelor's degree programs in architecture at the community college level. And we're at the point where we want more practice management, project management, business specifications, the practical meat of what we do as architects taught in the schools. And the existing curriculums at the other schools in our state are less willing to make those adjustments. And so we're working with community colleges to develop. The state of California has allowed them to create their own bachelor's degree programs as community colleges, which is fantastic. And so we're working with them on creating curriculum that architecture firms would like new graduates to have, which means they will graduate more valuable to firms, more practical knowledge of what's needed in a firm as an employee. And I don't know, it's just giving them the tools that they need to work in the profession. So that's something we're working with. One of the other things that we did at the Academy for Emerging Professionals is we advocated to add the term architect in training, which is AIT, in our legislation. So we're introducing that to legislation this year. And we're hoping to have that as a legal term for test takers to use while they're getting their license. So we're making good changes. Yeah. We're moving the profession forward.
Yeah, because that's all fantastic. Because I always hated, like, when I was studying, they're like, call yourself an emerging professional. And I'm like, who outside of architecture would even know what I am saying? Like, I can't say I'm an architect. So I have to say I'm an emerging professional, and that's going to turn into a whole long discussion on what I am talking about.
I know, it's the longest discussion. How do you explain what you do without saying you're an architect or almost an architect?
But if you say architect in training, like, I either say that or an architectural apprentice. Like, you know, if we could just use those terms, then we don't have to go explain ourselves to make people even more confused on what an architect does.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad you guys are getting this in the community college level, because it's a lot of the reasons why I started mentorDINO is trying to fill those gaps that they don't teach you in school. Not only just the specifications. I'm working on a course with that to add into it, but they don't learn how to draft or to hand draw things anymore. So they come into a firm and they don't even know how to dimension properly. They don't know how things get put together because they're not on construction sites when they're in school. They're not figuring out how to own a firm. They don't know how to work in a giant team if they're getting hired by a bigger firm. They're used to by themselves, maybe one other person, and then build things with giant cantilevers with products that don't exist. So I'm super excited you're getting it in the community college level, because I know I have people tell me to go teach professional practice. I'm like, well, professional practice is so tiny out of a full bachelor master's program. I did research for Build Pittsburgh, our local AIA Pittsburgh conference, and I studied the nearest 25 schools and what their programs were, and seeing how much they're the same throughout all of them. And professional practice was 2% of the total 5 or 6 year curriculum, and most of them they don't even learn it till you're in your master's. I'm like, you're going 5 years without even knowing how any sort of business of architecture, but then you get a measly 2 hours, and that's all you're gonna learn. But they want you to go own your own firm and do these things. I'm like, this seems so out of balance.
I 100% agree.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned you saw Melody's presentation from the beginning. Even in hers, she's like, there's not even specifications taught, and that's half of the construction documents. You have no idea what I'm talking about when I even say the word specifications.
I know. I did, so back when I was younger, in that construction firm that I worked at, that was a design build firm. It was a new company, and we were going and we were growing and we were building, and just, go. And then the boss said, hey, we need project manuals, because now we're working in 5 different states doing, now we had studios. We had 3 studios. One was hospitality, which was hotels, and one was medical, doing everything except hospitals. And then one was commercial, and I was the commercial studio lead. At a young age, in my 20s, leading the team for 5 states. But they said, we need someone to write specs. And our architect, we had 2 licensed architects on staff, not me. So I was a studio lead, not as a licensed person. But they said, we need specs. And I was on maternity leave or something, I think, and wanting to come back into the workplace more slowly. So they gave me a project of writing the master specs.
Hey.
And I didn't know what master specs were. And I didn't know, but I needed to write the master specs for our 3 different studios. So one for medical, one for hospitality, and one for commercial, which is kind of everything else. Mm-hmm. So that was, I was actually really grateful that they gave me that task. I learned so much, and they also let me go talk to the contractors. And I learned how to write specs from the contractors, and I asked them all of the questions, like, what quality control do you guys actually do in the field? What would be, if we put this quality control level in the specs, are we asking for too much, or should we be asking for more? Or what products do you typically use that you can recommend that we, throw in there? Things like that.
Yeah. When you have to find 3 manufacturers to have options. It's like, well, what ones are the reliable ones? What ones can we have easy access to that aren't a long lead time?
Yeah. But we were one team. We were builders and designers all under one roof. So we needed to work together well. So I wrote master specs not knowing anything about specs. I hadn't seen a spec book ever before. I had no idea. So I learned about CSI and jumped right in and wrote master specs. So,
nope.
You don't understand how to do your plans unless you understand the specs. I can't and they have to, the importance of the specs influence your plans. And if they're not matching up, I don't know. It's just for those who want to do better at their job in architecture, learn how to write specs.
Yeah, because people oftentimes try to put so much in the drawings side, and you don't need to because other components or details are owned in the spec. So you don't need to go in excruciating detail within the drawings. You just need to be able to describe what it is so they know where to go in the spec, and the spec has the more fine-grained detail, and then it's owned in one spot. So you don't have any clashes between drawings and specs, or clashes within your own drawings if you changed it in one spot and forgot the other two.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. But I have heard from contractors that they don't read the specs ever. Only they're legally held to them. So
Yeah.
that's up to them if they don't want to read them. But yeah.
Check out the full discussion from this bite of advice here. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on more mentorDINO content.